Okay, I have exciting news. I read a Percy Jackson book. And I read the Percy Jackson book, the Rick Riordan book of the year. I am so pleased with myself. I stayed up all last night to read it in one go, and that is the final book in the Trials of Apollo series, The Tower of Nero! It's a thing. I've read it. It's in my hands. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. And oh my goodness, I had to read it without the dust jacket. But underneath it, look, it's got the Trials of Apollo symbol. Can you see that? It's kind of reflective. And it's got a gorgeous spine. But yes, I read it and I am so happy I did. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Trials of Apollo is part of Rick Riordan's series about the Greek and Roman gods, and it's like a sequel series. It carries on from Heroes of Olympus, which carried on from Percy Jackson. Now, Percy Jackson is not a main character in this series. In this series, as the title would suggest, we follow Apollo, who has been punished into mortaldom by Zeus for actions that he did in the Heroes of Olympus series. To be honest, I think Zeus was overreacting a bit, but in Zeus, he's the drama queen. Anyway, it was so good, and here's some advanced commentary on the Tower of Nero from the gods themselves. So, I'm confident that with careful strategic planning, Apollo will regain his rightful place on Mount Olympus. Athena, goddess of wisdom. Apollo's still in trouble. How often does the sister have to step in to help? Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Seed by seed, Meg shall prevail. Demeter, goddess of agriculture. Time to yank that stinkweed Nero. Ares, god of war. I just hope Percy stays out of the storm this time. The dude deserves a break. Poseidon, god of the sea. Send in a real hero, like the D'Angelo kid. Hades, god of the underworld. What I miss? Dionysus, god of wine. Zeus, king of the gods. Yes! Okay, I love that he did that. So I can't say anything else about this series without going into massive spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, or any of the Trials of Apollo series, leave, go read. Spoilers, spoiler galore. You have been alerted. If you get spoiled now, not my fault. Okay, so let's get into it. This book was really good. It's almost 400 pages. Not quite. It gets to 395. Okay, now I have so many quotes in this because, oh my goodness, with the quotes. So, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know I already talked about the first two chapters, so I won't go into too much detail about them, except I will reiterate the first two verse of prophecy that we got in those chapters. So, first one is, O son of Zeus, the final challenge face. The tower of Nero to alone ascend. Dislodge the beast that has usurped thy place. The son of Hades, cavern runner's friend, must show the secret way unto the throne. On Nero's own your lives do now depend. Okay, so in the first two chapters we meet Lugasloa, a Gaul and Meg's master-at-arms. She's a vamp. And we call her Lou, thank goodness, because I cannot pronounce that name. And she calls Meg Sapling. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, these nicknames. They're so cute. And then it's like, oh, Apollo has developed so much. Okay, so much. Because I recently started reading the first book again. And in the first book, he immediately goes to Percy's place and expects Percy to solve all his problems. In this one, he doesn't want to go to Percy's place. He's resistant. He's like, let's not go, okay? Because he doesn't want to get Percy into danger. Because he's like, no, every time we've gone to somewhere for someone for help, we've put them in danger. I'm not doing this again. And he called the arrow Dodona, his friend, and like pulls out the arrow and is like, tell me we don't have to go to Percy's. And the arrow of Dodona's like, you know you do. So they go there, but it turns out Percy is on a road trip with Grover and Annabeth. He graduated! He's taking a road trip the long way down to Camp Jupiter, where he and Annabeth are going to go to college. And so, but Paul and Sally offer them sanctuary, and we meet Estelle, Percy's baby sister, and she is so cute. She has his sea green eyes, which I find a bit strange, but she also has black and grey hair that her father has, and I'm like, how does this work? But she's so adorable. She giggles at like just about everything, and Paul shows that he is the best dad in this franchise and the best stepdad, because it was revealed, because you know Percy went missing in the Heroes of Olympus series, that there's only one school that will take him in, and Paul is really upset because it's not the best school, and he's like, it wasn't Percy's fault, he didn't choose to go missing, and he's just, oh, I love Paul. And then Apollo makes me cry, okay, on page 41, wait, I'm gonna read it. Okay, on page 41, he makes me cry. What was it about kindness? In my time as Lester Papadopoulos, I had learned to stand up under horrendous verbal abuse and constant life-threatening violence, but the smallest act of generosity could ninja kick me right in the heart and break me into a blubbering mess of emotions. Darn you, Paul and Sally, and your cute baby too! How could I repay them for providing me with this temporary refuge? I felt like I owed them the same thing I owed Camp Jupiter and Camp Half-Blood, the way station and the cistern, Piper and Frank and Hazel and Leo, and yes, especially Jason Grace. I owed them everything. How could I not? And I just like, throughout this book, he keeps bringing up Jason, and I'm like, stop mentioning Jason, my heart can't take this! Okay, so they come up with a plan, which is for Apollo and Meg to surrender themselves, and a small group of demigods to sneak in by Python. And it's revealed Lou was Meg's guardian, she was the one who would take her to school, make sure she went to the hospital, that sort of thing. Yeah. So they leave the Blowfist family, you know, nice and safe in their apartment, which is good. They stage a fight on the top of a roof of a building. Meg and Apollo both sustain injuries, and Lou is thrown off the building by Apollo into a car. And then they ride, and then Meg is really excited. They ride in the Chariot of Damnation with the Grey sisters, and she just thinks it's the best thing ever. And they give the third verse of prophecy. A dare reveals the path that was unknown, and bears destruction, lion, snake entwined, or else the Principess never be overthrown. And as soon as it said a dare, I was like, wait, Rachel Elizabeth Dare? Are we gonna see Rachel? And Apollo is embarrassed about his behavior when he's a god. Like, throughout this book, he's thinking about the stuff that was important to him when he was a god, and he's just like, how did I prioritize that nonsense? And so they arrive at Camp Half-Blood, and Mr. D is here, and I'm like, yay or nay? I don't know. Like, he hugs Apollo, and he's like, our father really did this to you. And he starts teasing him, because, you know, something we forget is they're actually brothers, like half-brothers, but they're both children of Zeus. So, yeah, we really see that in their interactions. And he calls Apollo Mr. A, and he's like, this is my assistant. If you have any questions, direct them towards him, because we have a bunch of new campers. And then Apollo reunites with Will and Nico, and he starts crying when Will hugs him. And we get Nico's reaction to Jason, and he's not handling it well, guys. And then Apollo passes out. But when he's awake, we find out that Nico is suffering from PTSD, and Mr. D is helping him through it, because Dionysus is not just the god of wine, he's the god of madness, that sort of thing. So I guess he understands mental health issues in a way that most people wouldn't, so he's giving Nico therapy, essentially. And he's really not handling Jason's death well. Like, apparently he flew into a rage, like he did when Bianca died, only not quite as bad, because, Will is there for him. But now he's hearing voices telling him to go to Tartarus, and he's not doing well, guys. And Apollo gets to see Kayla and Austin again, as well as Will, and he loves his kids so much, and there's 3 new kids there, and they're like, this is our dad? Really? This is our dad? And I'm like, oh, sweeties, you don't know yet. But, yeah, he gets to spend some time with his kids. And Mr. D is as helpful as usual, which is to say, not at all. And then, so just who are Nico's friends? Because remember, it says son of Hades, cavern runners friends. And when it said cavern runners, I was like, is it the ants? Are we going to see Mama Ant again? Tell me it's the ants. And we go off to see Rachel at her house, and I'm like, yay! We haven't seen Rachel in so long. She was barely there in Heroes of Olympus. I want to see my girl Rachel. And the Arrow of Dodona has self-confidence issues because Apollo offers to take it back to the Grove of Dodona, and he's just like, no, I can't go back. I haven't completed my quest yet. It's like, they'll all laugh at me. No one is particularly helpful, because Apollo's trying to get information on the Tower of Nero, and no one knows anything. But supplies are gathered. And Meg and Apollo talk. And so the gang now consists of Will, Nico, Apollo, and Meg. And then we go and see Rachel, and she is fabulous, as usual. And she's been having a few small visions, which she's painted out. So, like, key moments, like the burning maze, that sort of thing. And apparently Python is toying with her. So she's got Python in her head as well now. And I'm like, And there are ominous cows outside a mansion, and only Rachel can see. So only Rachel can see the mansion. And only they can see the cows. Regular mortals can't. And I was just like, wait, are these the flesh-eating cows from freaking hell again, from Hades? You remember when they were in the early series with the flesh-eating cows? I'm like, is it them again? Or were they flesh-eating horses? It was one of the two. I remember flesh-eating cows or flesh-eating horses. I can't remember which it was. And then Rachel had blueprints literally for the Tower of Nero, so they managed to work out where they need to go. Because they figured out that this is Nero, okay? He's going to be threatening to burn New York. So they need to figure out how to turn off the kill switch, which would unleash the Greek fire, which is what the group of demigods are going to do when they sneak in. And then Rachel gets possessed by Python, and she spits out the final verse. And it's, Apollo's flesh and blood shall soon be mine. Alone he must descend into the dark. This Sibyl never again to see his sign, less grappling with me till his final spark. The god dissolves, leaving not a mark. And it turns out the cavern dwellers are not the ants, they're the troglodytes. But with regards to the poem, I'm like, that's not very hopeful, but Rachel's coming with us. And then the cows attack, and it turns out it's not the flesh-eating cows, it's the Tauri Sylvesters, and they're impervious, you can't kill them. But they're defeated by pits, so if you drop them into a pit, they'll choke on their own anger. It's a pretty horrible way to die, but they're not exactly nice cows. These ain't no Bessie. And then they have to do an epic jump onto this construction thing, so some of the cows fall into the thing below because they're defeated by pits. And then they have to shadow travel, and they shadow travel to the troglodytes, but as they're on the way there, it's revealed Python, the reason they have to get Delphi away from him so bad is because he can use it to shape the future. And Rachel is determined not to let him win. Then it turns out Tori don't follow Matador instructions. Go figure. They have a quick break while Nico recovers from the shadow travel. Turns out Kit Kats fix most things. And it turns out Will can glow in the dark, and Apollo is so proud. And I'm like, Will can glow in the dark. This is so lovely. And apparently, so we meet the Trogs, and they look like rowdy school children covered in mud, and they speak with clicks, screeches, and growls interspersed. And they love eating lizards and wearing hats. And they prepare a skink dinner, because Nico bought skink as an offering so that they wouldn't eat everyone else. And so now Rachel's saying we need to get Camp Half-Blood to attack the Tower of Nero, so to create a diversion. And Apollo really doesn't want them to. He's like, I can't keep putting people in danger like this. And he goes, I'll make things right, or I will die trying. I'm like, don't say that, baby, don't die. But it goes to show how much he's changed. And then Apollo was this close to convincing the Trogs to help them when the freaking Tory attacked, because of course, they're brilliant trackers. I'm like, okay, not only are you impervious and only defeated by freaking pits, you're good trackers. Honestly, it's excessive. And it turns out the Tory are like the mortal enemies of the Trogs. And this other Trog, Fred, gets Meg and Apollo to the Tower of Nero. He's not a fan of them, but Apollo gives him a ball to give to a child, because, you know, the Tory attack, and there's this child trying to get the ball, and Apollo's like, no, run to safety, I'll get the ball. And then he says to the Trog, we have to help one another. That's the only future worth fighting for. And then we get, so Meg and Apollo surrendered themselves to Nero, and I hate it when the villains are clever. I hate it. Because he figures out that Lou was going to betray him, so he gets one of his children to cut off her hands. And then Lou and Apollo are imprisoned, and Meg is to be rehabilitated. Also, he called Christians terrorists, the ones in the Roman thing, and I resent that, okay? Proper Christians don't hurt anyone. Who exactly are we terrorizing? People use the Bible to justify their hatred. They can be terrorists, but they're not proper Christians. So in the cell, Apollo does his best to heal Lou because they didn't take his medicine stuff away. They just took his weapons. And he dreams of Jason. And I'm like, Uncle Rick, please stop. Please stop bringing up Jason, okay? I'm not over that. And Jason tells him to beware Mirath's servant, the lion snake dude. He also says, it's like, it's okay, I died well. It's okay. And Apollo's like, we miss you. He's like, I miss you guys too. And I'm like, stop doing this. Stop, please. Okay, so then in the cell, Lou and Apollo are becoming buds, and dang, is this woman resilient? Like, seriously. So she tells Apollo to try lucid dreaming, trying to control his dreaming. So the first bit is funny, because, like, he comes across Python, and he just cuts him off, and he's like, I don't have time for you, this was not where I was headed. He goes up. And he sees Nero with Meg, and I'm just like, stay away from Meg, you manipulative piece of crap. And do not bargain with the thing guarding the faces they need to destroy to kill Nero, the Leonotophaling. It's immortal, apparently it's a Persian god. Yeah. So then, when he wakes up, Lou has armed herself with a fork and a knife by putting them into her bandages on her stumps, and I'm like, most people would give up, but okay, yeah, kudos. And so the Guardian, the the thing I can't pronounce, wants immortality, and Lou's going after him. I'm like, Lou, please don't sacrifice yourself. I don't want to lose anyone else, please. And Apollo's like, don't sacrifice yourself. Meg needs you. And we have a reunion with the arrow of the donor. And Apollo vaporizes to Germani with fire, and it's time to save Meg. So the next scene is awesome. He manages, like, he can't get, he doesn't know where he's going. This tower is very confusing. But he ends up in a control room, and he's just so badass in it. And he's got some of his godly powers back, and he's trying so hard to spell the hapless mortals in the room, while still killing, like, vaporizing the Germani and whatnot. It's just like, damn, boy! But because he's trying so hard to spare the mortals, he gets the leader dude, manages to take him down, and his nose gets broken, but then Nico turns up and turns the leader dude into a skeleton, and the mortals realize, hey, we should leave. And it's really funny, because when Apollo first burst into the room, he goes, stop! He starts singing, stop in the name of love! Or however that song goes, I don't actually know it. And then it turns out reinforcements have arrived, because the Trogs are wreaking havoc, and are apparently bulletproof. And so is Camp Half-Blood. Camp Half-Blood has arrived with, like, the Pegasus, and it's just so cool. And Sharon is here, or Chiron, depending. Yeah, how you pronounce that name, is here. And I'm like, hey, good to see ya. And the newbies think it's a field trip, and one of them literally goes, do we get to do field trips like this every week? This is awesome. And so Kayla and Austin help their dad. Kayla gives him some Mountain Dew, and apparently Mountain Dew helps gods and demigods and other magical creatures focus. And I'm like, I knew I liked that drink. I knew I liked it. And then so Austin helps him to get, and we get Cassie's ID, which is this younger one of, because it turns out Nero has adopted like 12 demigods, including Meg, and Cassius is one of the youngest ones, and he's just, oh, the poor thing. And we get Meg's bracelets back, and Austin lures away a bunch of bad guys by singing, Pop Goes the Weasel, because apparently, if any child of Apollo sings that, people will stampede. And then it turns out, of course, Nero has a bloody backup plan. And his backup plan is to gas the entire building, killing everyone inside. And I'm like, but Rachel sent Screechbling, so the Trogs are going to try and stop up the backup plan. Screechbling is the leader of the Trogs. And Nero is a manipulative bastard. You dare mention Jason and the others? Like, he tries to make everything sound like it's Apollo's fault, and I'm like, excuse me? And so he gets the Dryads to attack Apollo, but Meg saves them and frees herself from Nero. And then Nero arrives. No, not Nero. Nico arrives. Rachel sent him with a bull and a cowboy hat on. And I'm just like, yes! So he sends the bull to kill Nero. And there's a fight, with Meg, Nico, and Apollo taking everyone on. And Apollo gets stabbed, and Nero presses the button. It fails. And Will arrives with Screechbling and Rachel. She has the faces, and Lou is there too, and they're ready to kick ass, and Will is just so cool. He bursts into the room, and he's just like, no one hits my boyfriend, or tries to kill my dad! Yes, Will, yes! And it turns out Lou traded hers and Nero's immortality, because Nero's people who worked from, their immortality comes from his. And just like, yeah, it's a bit of a shady deal. But the Guardian seemed okay with it. And so Nero is not going down gracefully. He's just like, kill him! And then Nero and Apollo end up playing tug of war with the faces. And Nero loses because it rips it too. And he's going like, I am a god! And then Apollo goes, I am the god of the sun and I reject your divinity. And so now apparently Python has all of the Triumvirate's power now, and I'm like, well, how does that work? And then Apollo passes out again. This boy passes out so much. And he sees the 11 gods watching him from the throne room, and Artemis is pleading with Zeus for Apollo's life. He's been like, look, he's been through more than anyone thought he would go through. Hasn't he done enough? And then Hera stands up for Apollo, and she's been crying. And I'm like, Hera? Hera standing up for Apollo as the world gone mad! Because she's basically, like, what's his name? Ares is talking about getting another god to fill Apollo's place. And Hera's just like, stop talking about him like he's already dead. And so Apollo now has to go off alone to slay Python. And I'm like, And so it's a goodbyes galore, lots of hugs. And as Apollo's leaving, he's like very unsure about being a god again, because he's like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't remember how to do it. And I'm not the person I once was. And he talks to Sharon, and this bit got me so excited I started squealing. Sharon met with Bast and the severed head dude from the Magnus Chase Chronicles. I can't remember his name, but you know the dude that gave, what's his name is magic. I've forgotten names. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he was talking to that. And I'm like, what is the problem? And Uncle Rick, please write this. I need all of these characters to interact, please. Like, we've had demigods and magicians, now just throw in the Vikings. Apollo is trying so hard. It's when he's fighting against Python, he's trying so hard to win, and he's shooting his arrows, and he won't stop. He just keeps going, like he misses, and he's just like, nope, we're just gonna keep going, And he's in an in-between state now. He's like, he's not human, he's not God, he's fully in between. And he goes, I won't hide, and freaking charges at Python, and I'm just like, the Arrow of Dodona is there cheering him on, and then it reveals. The Arrow of Dodona reveals what he was meant to do, and the Arrow of Dodona always knew that he was gonna have to do this, and so Apollo has to stab Python in the eye with the Arrow of Dodona, which kills the arrow, and I'm like, no, buddy, no, don't go, please. And then, so, it's like, Python made a mistake, which was Apollo will fall, because he was trying to control Delphi, and so he said that, which means he's like, so you must fall. And Apollo starts bringing Python down too, and it's like, you'll die. And he's like, I'm fine with that, as long as you die too. And it's like a full-on Gandalf scene, because they're both falling, and they're fighting, and they're falling into Hades, like the underworld, and they're full-on fighting in the air, and Apollo is completely out of weapons at this point, just using his bare fists. And then they land in the river Styx, which obviously is very painful. And then they fall, or it's like, okay, I think Python falls into little soul-destroying chaos. You cannot survive that at all. There's no way. And Apollo nearly falls into it. And then the goddess Styx shows up, and I'm like, oh crap. Because if you remember back in the first book, he made a promise on the river Styx, and you can't break a promise on the river Styx, but he definitely broke it. And then so she's just like, no, you've learned and you've changed, so now remember. And then she goes away, and he lives. Like in the next bit, he wakes up and he's in Mount Olympus, and he's alive, and Artemis is there, and he's fully Apollo again, but he doesn't know what to do. He starts crying. He's hugging Artemis and crying, and Artemis is just like, there, it's okay. And she helps him get dressed and then leaves, and he's like, who am I now? I'm not I'm not who I once was. So then he goes to meet with the other 11. It's as awkward as it sounds. And it turns out Hira's genuinely upset about Jason. Like, she snaps at Zeus at one point. I've got to read you that scene, actually. No, I can't do it justice. I have to read that scene. Where is it? Queen Hera lifted her veil. As I'd seen in my dream, her eyes were red and swollen from crying. But when she spoke, her tone was as hard as bronze. She glared at her husband. At least Apollo did something! Not this again, Zeus rumbled. My chosen, Hera said. Jason Grace, your son, and you... I didn't kill him, woman! Zeus thundered. That was Caligula! Yes, Hera snapped. And at least Apollo grieved. At least he got vengeance! Wait, what was happening? Was my wicked stepmother defending me? Much to my shock, when Hera met my eyes, her gaze wasn't hostile. She seemed to be looking for solidarity, sympathy even. You see what I have to deal with? Your father is horrible. In that moment, I felt a twinge of compassion for my stepmother for the first time in, ever. Don't get me wrong, I still disliked her. But it occurred to me that being Hera might not be so easy, given who she was married to. In her place, I might have become a bit of an impossible meddler too. And I'm just like, oh snap. Snap. Like, yeah, Hera is still definitely horrible, but given who she's married to. So then the meeting ends, like, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Apparently there was betting going on. So Apollo checks in on his horses, who pulled the sun chariot, and then he goes to Camp Half-Blood. Everyone's okay, they're all very excited to see him, and he goes in the form of Lester. Because he just feels more comfortable in that now. And Rachel gives Solangelo, Nico and Will, a prophecy about Bob, so it looks like they are going to go to Tartarus to rescue him. And I'm like, honestly, I wish it wasn't Tartarus, but Bob deserves getting rescued. Bob deserves it! And then he visits the way station, and they're doing well, and the Hunters of Artemis are there, and they're doing good too. We see Reyna, we see Thalia. Apparently they're hunting a very wily fox. And Leo is teaching disenfranchised youths metalworking, and it's been adopted by Jo and her wife, and it's so beautiful. Except Calypso's at band camp because she and Leo had an argument. I need a book on that one, Uncle Rick, please. And then Frank and Hazel, and then he checks in on Camp Jupiter, which is doing well, and the repairs are going extremely well. And Frank and Hazel are leading the 12th Legion to new heights, and they're so good as being praetors. And Lavina did teach the 5th cohort tap dancing, and apparently it's one of the most feared things now when they play their war games. And Persebeth are there and preparing for college, and apparently the road trip went a bit haywire. And I've seen a lot of people complaining because apparently Percy and Annabeth didn't realize Jason was dead until they got to Camp Jupiter, and they're like, but Grover would knew, why didn't Grover tell them? And I'm thinking Grover didn't tell them because he was trying to spare them pain and let them just have a fun road trip for once in their lives. He probably told them as they were getting close to Camp Jupiter. But he wanted them to actually just, have a fun road trip for once. That's probably why he didn't tell them. And then he checks in on Piper, and she's doing well and dating a girl. Okay. And Meg and then he checks in on Meg, and Meg and her siblings are recovering, and they're at her old dad's house. They're doing lots of gardening. Peaches has a girlfriend. Maybe, I don't know. And Lou has mechanical hands, which were gifted to her by the Festus cabin. And she's really excited to see Apollo, and there's a hug, and yeah. And then so Apollo gives Meg a gift of a unicorn, and then reassures her of undying friendship, and goes, always. The sun always comes back. And then we have a lovely farewell to the readers, which I'm just going to read to you because it was so lovely. So, dear reader, we have come to the end of my trials. You have followed me through 5 volumes of adventures and 6 months of pain and suffering. By my reckoning, you have read 210 of my haikus. Like Meg, you'd surely deserve a reward. What would you accept? I am fresh out of unicorns. However, any time you take aim and prepare to fire your best shots, any time you seek to put your emotions into a song or a poem, know that I'm smiling on you. We are friends now. Call on me. I will be there for you. That's where it ends. And that was honestly just a lovely touch, Uncle Rick thanking the reader, and this story was really, really good. Like, I don't think, with this book, I don't think I was ever going to be fully satisfied, because either way, I'm saying goodbye. And I'm sorry about the clapping, I have no idea what's going on downstairs. I'm never going to be ready to say goodbye to this series or this world. Good news is, Uncle Rick teased that he might write 4 other books, not as part of a series, but each one will focus on a particular character. And he said that you would be able to tell in Trials of Apollo who they were about. So I think we can pretty much guarantee we're going to get a book on Nico and Will going to Tartarus to rescue Bob. I think we're going to get a book on... the Hunters of Artemis and that Fox. The other 2 I am less sure on, but I'm hoping we get a book about Leo, and I'm hoping we get a book about what Sharon was talking about with the other Pantheons, and we see Magnus and Percy and Carter and Sadie all teaming up to take on something. I really want to see it. And bringing in, like, their crews, like, all of them. So, I really, really want to see that. So I really hope one of those is about that, because that's all I've wanted for so long. And I thought it was going to happen in this, but it didn't. It makes sense, but I thought it was going to. And, yeah. So this book was really good, 10 out of 10. Thank you so much, Rick Riordan, for writing this and all the other books. I am forever grateful. And I'm so glad that I went on this journey. And I can't believe it's over. I started reading Percy Jackson when I was 12, I think. And now I'm 24. It's been exactly 12 years. Thanks, Uncle Rick. So this book, I'm really sorry about the yelling. I have no idea what's going on. There's drinking. Anyway, I will let this go here. Please, please let me know your thoughts on this book in the comment section down below, because I have no one to talk to this book about. No one's reached this far in my friend group, so if you guys could comment so I can talk about it with you, that would be brilliant. Yeah. If you like this video, like my last video will be down here, and subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys!